Mary boy, and we'll show these fascists what a couple of hillbillies can do.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, fascists, you may be surprised. People all over this world are getting organized. You're bound to lose. You fascists are bound to lose.
All you fascists bound to lose. All you fascists bound to lose. All you fascists bound to lose.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the James Kepple Radio Hour. We are bringing you from the Pharaoh Sleep Study, Kim Jorgensen from My Hot Air Balloon, All You Fascists Bound to Lose, a song based upon Woody Guthrie, good Oklahoma kid. But the person that I'm more interested in at the moment right now is our guest, ladies and gentlemen. Let's give a warm welcome for S.J. Anderson. Are you there?
Yes, sir.
All
I'm right
right.
here with you, Jimmy.
All right,
What are
boss.
you doing tonight?
Well, you know, we put together this ramshackle sort of studio. Looks really good. We got a couple of different microphones coming from different directions. I like the interior of your car. You said you're selling it?
Yeah, I'm getting ready to, give this car over to the next owner and move on from owning a vehicle for a while. Going to be kind of living out of a backpack and doing some traveling and kind of getting a little bit closer to the ground, as it were. And so, yeah, I'm excited.
Well, I'm excited for you because isn't that the dream, to just hit the road, with a little bit of money and see how far you can go, what your mettle is, Obviously, if you're getting rid of the car, you're either planning on going to a couple different locations, maybe New York or Boston. But it sounds like that maybe you're planning an international adventure.
Well, we'll see. I mean, like you say, you just sort of go where your wings take you. I mean, I've got right now planned a road trip, so I'll be getting into someone else's vehicle, not my own, in Los Angeles up through to Portland, Oregon, in the beginning of September. So that's really kind of the first leg of my journey, and we'll see what happens after that. I guess the world is open for business.
Well, it's good to see you back on the road. You seem happy. You seem like you have some sort of new energy abounding from you. Like, it's time to finally unleash myself from this fucking casket I put myself in Austin for so long.
Well, I mean, J-O-B, right? It's the death of parts of the selfhood under the weight of a J-O-B, and it's part of the human condition. I mean, working, at least in the modern society, is a requirement, or generating money. Either you have the money or you have to generate the money.
Well, you have to generate the money, yeah.
I'm just saying, sometimes what's required to generate the money can be difficult, and there can be an endurance test that's a part of that. And yeah, getting an opportunity to not have to go through that every day feels great.
Well,
Absolutely.
and no, that's the whole idea. Okay, so for me, the whole idea about America is that you should be able to work hard, achieve something, and move on to the next level, right? So that's the next level, is not having a job, but in fact, your job is just you. You're generating money by your existence.
Well, yeah, I've been generated enough to not have to do the generating for a little bit.
Well,
but I mean, the reality
great
is,
news.
there's the fact of needing cash to pay for food and shelter. I mean, that's how I like to distill this very important point. I mean, you've got to have that food and shelter, man, and it helps to be able to pay for it. That way you don't have to depend on others or get sucked into kind of an unhealthy dynamic or something like that. AKA use other people or be used.
Sure.
And so, I think there's definitely the American spirit has this idea of kind of standing on your own 2 feet and generating income to support yourself. And it's been good, man. I've actually, I can bemoan all I want vicissitudes of the daily JOB grind, but there actually is a kind of a freedom in generating that cash flow, under the by way of a employment contract, and then being able to leave that relationship when I have enough cash to not have to do that anymore. So
I just felt like I went to work just now. Like, like just hearing that, I just punched in, you know, like,
Yeah.
I'm waiting when my cigarette break is.
Sure,
So
yeah.
here's the deal. We finally, all right, so just to give the listeners back at home an idea what happened, we were working through a lot of technical difficulties. This is the first show. It's the pilot show. So we're gonna get all the bugs out of the way. But we've been actually talking for the last 40 minutes. And so I hope that we can get some of that juicy dialogue back in there on some level. It probably won't be the same topic, so that'll be on the extended version of the DVD available in 2019. But I just wanted to let everybody know that S.J. Anderson, the great poet and writer and photographer, he has signed a deal with Underground Books, undergroundbooks.org, to put out a book of poetry. 28 pages of some of the best stuff that he's ever written, distilled into literature, 2018 by Underground Books. Still untitled project, but we're looking forward to it. And you know what? It's going to really have a great effect to have S.J. Anderson amongst the fold. I want to give a little introduction to him, I guess. So he's one of my old friends. We actually went head-to-head together in debate at the state finals, the University of Texas. And since then, well, it was before then, actually. But you did the cover of 2 of my books. And so, they're beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome, James. Yeah, that's right. I helped to design the cover, and some a photograph of mine was used for the cover of your book, Couplet. You and Kim Jorgensen's book, Couplet, and then your book, Thus Virginia Passes, which were both, great books. And I was happy to be a part of that project. And thanks for, having me do that. It was great.
Well, we all know who's going to be doing the next book, cover-wise. That's already a done deal. We just got to keep writing those books. I'm glad that you have a new book coming out. A lot of people have not been exposed to your poetry, and I know that originally when we were talking, you said you wanted to start this interview or this conversation out with poetry. So should we do that now? Is that a great segue, or?
Yeah, let's read some poems. I mean, I think it's a great way to set the tone for whatever heavy-duty exchange we have later, or whatever kind of gravity we end up delving into. But having the tonality of creativity and poetry, and the space between language and these kind of other realms that poetry can access, I mean, it's always, I think, a good hat to put on before an exchange. And yeah, I can certainly read some poetry. We had talked about this date,
August 12th, 2017. So on this date, August 12th, there was a poet born to the world. What was his name?
Donald Justice.
And he's quite a prolific character. He had a reaching hand over a lot of great writers over the years. They called him they put him into a category where he was kind of like the boring, sort of like mild-mannered guy that had no sort of outright vices and just kind of lived like an average life. But his poetry, especially in some of his shorter stuff, is immaculate. I mean, the man knew how to put words together.
Oh, absolutely. It's tight as a bark on tree. This stuff is quite good. So yeah, I can read a couple of his pieces. Now, he was born on August 12th. I can get that year up. I don't have the year here.
1920 something.
And Donald Justice. Maybe you want to tell the people listening, this is August 12th today.
Yeah, we're gonna introduce that in the further. But yes, absolutely. This is August 12th, the night of the murdered poets. What was that?
Okay,
was that a video game?
Pardon me. Let me turn off. No, I just getting a text. I'm getting blown up here.
I was like, wow, this guy, he's playing video games.
August 12th, 1925 in Miami, Florida was when Donald Justice was born. And yeah, I'm going to read two pieces of his.
All right. Let's hear 'em.
The first piece is called Bus Stop. Lights are burning in quiet rooms where lives go on resembling ours. The quiet lives that follow us, these lives we lead but do not own, stand in the rain so quietly when we are gone, so quietly. And the last bus comes letting dark umbrellas out, black flowers, and lives go on. And lives go on like sudden lights at street corners, or like lights in quiet rooms left on for hours, burning. And the next
poem, yeah?
is called On the Death of Friends in Childhood. We shall not ever meet them bearded in heaven, nor sunning themselves among the bald in hell, if anywhere, in the deserted schoolyard at twilight, forming a ring perhaps, or joining hands in games whose very names we have forgotten. Come, memory, let us seek them there in the shadows.
That's beautiful.
So yeah, those are two little pieces by Donald Justice, really sweet pieces. I like how he sort of invokes, there's a certain, the malaise and a certain sadness to, and a longing and a kind of a missing part of, what's missing in a given present moment, you know what I'm saying? And there's always kind of a yearning for something else, or that can be included in just our daily experience. So I like his poetry very much.
No, there's some good truth. There's some good truth there. He died in an old person's home, after having some sort of medical implication, and
Oh boy.
he loved Iowa, man. I mean, so this is something that we wanted to talk about earlier that was off camera, but the Iowa writing program. You said that was a CIA initiative?
Well, listen, the CIA in the middle part of the 20th century had its fingers in a lot of aspects of the culture. And so most people, or a lot of people, think maybe the CIA is only involved in international initiatives, protecting America with intelligence against our enemies, let's say. But that's really a restrictive notion of what the CIA has been involved in. And in fact, in the middle part of the 20th century, they were actively involved in advocating culture, producing culture, and disseminating culture that they felt was
bad art.
Useful. They felt that this art would be useful in the kind of ideological wars of the 20th century. And this is the classic thing that a lot of regimes do. I mean, you can control the subtleties of how people think or perceive themselves. You really can get an upper hand in controlling other aspects of their lives, like the economics, or what they buy, for example, which I guess is the economics. And Iowa's Writers Workshop, there's a big essay that came out maybe 3 or 4 years ago where someone who was at the Iowa Writers Workshop decided to turn his talents on researching its history, and he stumbled upon these connections with the CIA and the initial founder of the workshop. I don't know the facts too well, okay? I encourage people to research this on their own. But yes, this general idea that the CIA was involved in disseminating the written word and the literature, prioritizing certain literatures over others, I think there's no doubt about that.
Well, I mean, the written word itself is actually, the control mechanism, correct? That's how we communicate between two people. So why wouldn't they first, sanction off the Iowa Writers Workshop or whatever, and then invest in painters or whatever they did? But that makes sense. That's because they're wanting to continuously control the nature and the dialogue that we have between people here in this country. So I think that's like a big issue right now. I mean, you see in Charlottesville. Did you like that?
Yeah, nice transition there, Jimmy. Yeah. Going right to that hot topic, aren't we?
Yeah. No, but here's how I feel about the whole situation. And I didn't see these pictures until earlier today, maybe 2 hours of all the people and the video I watched of the car and all this and all that. But I'm a little upset, and I know this may be a little bit of a questionable position to take, but I'm a little upset that people are not willing to accept the nature of history. And by taking these monuments of history's past and desecrating them or removing them, seems to make a small position. It's almost like they're trying to erase what happened here in the United States. There was a civil war, correct? And
as far as I know, that's what I read in the history books.
I read somebody.
As a young man.
Yeah, they said there was a civil war, and there was a presidency, of both countries, and I think that getting rid of that history is really kind of problematic, because people are not understanding what happened in this country without having both sides. I don't think it's fair to to change history in a manner which we can just like rub away things that might trigger someone or be upset about the outcome of this or that. It happened. Like,
well, let's
for one example, when people say that man was a monster, right? That man was not a fucking monster. That was a man. And that's my biggest problem, is they're taking away the humanity of what's happened. These people existed. They lived their daily lives. This is how history rolled on. But to say that this was bad or that was good is infinitely aggressive, because it happened.
Yeah, but look, like I'm going to push back a little bit. I mean, I think that, first of all, I like to frame it differently. I like to think about history as a living thing, and that the job is not to take away, but it's to preserve what might be lost. And so I think the truth is very hard to lose. I mean, you're going to have remnants of it in texts. You're going to have books. You're going to have ways to find, hopefully, the marginalized stories or the marginalized facts of history. And, you know, taking a statue down isn't going to erase, for example, like Robert E. Lee.
Robert E. Lee was one of the greatest patriots and generals of the United States.
But that said, I mean, listen, it's like if you move into a new apartment, okay, you get to put up the poster you want. If someone has like a Quiet Riot poster and that's triggering for you, or you don't like that music, just take it down and put up what you want. I can see that there might be usefulness in kind of creating your space in a way that is supportive of your value system. And so
is Quiet Riot like is that the benchmarker? Is that the litmus test?
It just came to my head in that moment. So, but yeah, I mean, history can't be erased. It can't happen as long as, I guess it could over a period hundreds and hundreds of years. You know, I mean, I want to take that back. But I mean, we know what happened in the Civil War. We know that there's different theories about who caused the Civil War. We know that it's a debate, a historical debate. And, you know, I support that discourse being allowed to continue. But yeah, I don't want, if like students at the University of Texas, I like what they did, because these students were walking by these statues of like Jefferson Davis and things. And yeah, they you know, maybe their grandfather or great grandparents were in bondage. And that symbol might not be the kind of symbol they want to see, but they removed the statues and put them in a museum, hopefully to preserve our history. At least they put them in a museum, right? Like that's the minimum they can do, right? I'm just saying, this is the other thing. I mean, these are things that change the landscape. Like, if you're from New Orleans and you go through all these fucking historic squares and this and that, and then the big statue that's there is gone, that's a difference in the way that you perceive reality, right? So whereas there was something, now there's nothing. So which is better, nothing or something? Because I feel that nihilistic attitude of just like, let's just scrub away, you know, the fact that these people were heroes for New Orleans, and say, you know what, we didn't make this park after him, and we didn't make this circle after him, and that statue, you know, never was there. And that's that's what's going to happen. Well, listen, I just think this to me isn't that fruitful of an avenue to go down, because it's kind of. I think it's horrible that they're taking down statues. Like, we don't have, like, this isn't Europe. This is the United States of America, right? So we don't have any sort of idyllic sort of architecture in certain places, and statues or monuments is like the least that we have, and we're even removing that culturally from our entertainment of the United States. Like, we just have to watch TV. We can't see a fucking statue. Well, I personally am not that concerned about statues, man. I really don't give a fuck about a statue one way or the other. I honestly, those are idols. Those are idols. They're against God. No, I get it. I fear that you're absolutely correct in the sense that. But what I'm trying to express is that culturally, at least, it bonds people back to the history of the city on some level. They'll have to say, look, why is Jefferson Davis on this thing? And they look up Jefferson Davis and they say, oh, he was president of the Confederate States of America, right? That's a fucking world leader. And to ignore that history is kind of... It just puts you on a side of being misinformed on these issues. That's all. Well, listen, I mean, we've got to try to be connected to what's gone before us, but not from the perspective of leader worship. I don't think that's ever going to be... No, not leader worship. I'm sorry. Yeah, it all... You're right. I mean, it's like Howard Zinn, People's History of the United States. I mean, he examined the history from the perspective of the oppressed, of the worker, of people that were marginalized. Those are the stories I'm interested in learning more about and upholding and kind of being in touch with. It's like I look at Texas and my family, and my father and my grandfather were sent to die for oligarchs.
And they didn't get a fucking statue.
And they got shell shocked for 5 years. My grandfather was shell shocked probably for most of the rest of his life. They were fodder for big money, making profit on the backs of our boys. And that's, so I don't ever want to lose touch with that, because I'm sitting here in Austin, Texas, 2017, and I'm just looking around, and we're living in kind of a mill, a corporatist mill where people's lives are kind of ground down every day. And that wealth that's generated is extracted to higher ups and to line the pockets and the bank accounts of higher ups. We're living in an oppressive system, let's just say. And I'm not a Marxist. I just think it's undeniable. There's kind of a grind that people experience, to go back to what we were talking about earlier, to put food on the table and to have shelter.
Well,
and in this country, I mean, you break an ankle, you sprain an ankle, and you're bankrupt.
You're bankrupt.
I guess that's what my point is this: to the extent knowing where we've come from helps us contextualize our current moment, so that we can see how we might be being targeted. That is, I think, very valuable.
Well, you can
put whatever statue.
No. I'm totally in agreement with you. Like the icon worship, the statue shit. Fuck, I could give a fuck. Take all the statues down. What I'm trying to express is what you just said, was that link to the past. That's what that symbolizes. And you're destroying that link to the past by removing
there's better links. I mean, I think we can defend a link to the past without having to say, I want Jefferson Davis's statue sitting there. I mean, listen, I personally...
Jefferson Davis
take it down or not.
was a sickly man. But we can't bullshit and say that he wasn't a great fucking speaker. He was an amazing orator.
Well, listen, I'm more interested in, like, books in the library.
What do they call that debate style?
Lincoln Douglas debate.
Oh shit! I thought it was Davis. I apologize.
Cross-examination debate. I'm more interested in things like to go back to controlling the language. This is something you mentioned earlier. I mean, ideas, thoughts, articulated, visions that are articulated, reality frames that can be expressed. I think this free flow is very important, and we're dealing with a technocratic age where there's very powerful entities that control the leverage of the flow of ideas. And I'm seeing stories, about how Google is now having AI and algorithms that censor this discourse. It's a programmable elimination of idea and thought, and it's against the interests of the oligarchs. And let's make no mistake, we're in an oligarchy. That's what scares me the most, more than a statue, is the present moment controlling of the language. Because I'd rather have a book that has a narratives about Jefferson Davis or varied takes on him, and be able to read and study that myself than look at a statue. But yeah, to the extent that taking down a statue emboldens people, taking away what I would view as other more important connections to our history, I can see how taking a statue down might be a slippery slope, or might be a dangerous, if it sort of emboldens the notion that that the symbols or the words or the ideas that are flowing are even now on the offing, are up for removal.
Well, that's the slippery slope. That I'm not bringing this up because I think it has anything to do with the fucking statues or the fucking history of the Confederate States of America. I'm just saying that it's a bold... They do it in the middle of the fucking night, when no one's there, and they take down, pieces of history that have been there. And what I'm trying to express is that the United States is a young country with, 300 years? So to even start with the... I mean, where does it stop? Does it stop at the night of the murdered poets?
Well, that's a great segue, because I mean, that night, poets were killed. Poets were killed for not having and expressing what they were told to express. And No, I mean, that's the worst manifestation of this idea that we need to sort of censor and restrict symbol sets or language. And I'm for a complete open flow of ideas. Now, that there's a marketplace, right? You can turn off what you don't want to hear and turn up what you do want to hear. And I support people having the ability to do that. You know what I'm saying? There's odious ideas out there that I will disavow and that I won't support with my own energy. You know what I'm saying? So let's be clear, there are odious things that exist. But I do think restricting speech is dangerous, and I do think it's one of the best parts, maybe the best part about the American way of life, that thankfully we still have a large remnant of, is this notion that speech should flow freely. And then not only that, but we'll protect people's right to say odious things. I saw the ACLU's coming out this week defending Milo Yiannopoulos.
I like that guy, Milo. Dangerous.
I don't like Milo.
I'm plugging
I don't like
Dangerous
Milo.
Books right now. Dangerous Books is his
Milo
new
is
imprint.
Megalomaniacal,
He's a book publisher, just like me, so I have to.
Charlatan, and he's got some pretty.
At least he wasn't at Charlottesville.
He's a showman, and I don't really think he's sincere.
We all know about Milo. We all know about Milo, but I'm just saying. I think.
Yeah, my point is that the ACLU has stepped in and said, listen, we're going to defend this guy's right to say whatever he wants, and I think that's a very American value. And I do not want to restrict the flow of symbols, the flow of language, the flow of reality frames, the flow of expression. That's a value I hold dear to my heart. And yeah, these poets were slaughtered in Soviet Russia, and hopefully it won't have to come to anything like that in our time. But when you have the super highway of ideas, Google, Facebook, etc., pressing a button and eliminating certain speech, I mean, isn't that akin to a kind of death, a kind of digital death?
Well, okay, so seriously, the correlation is implicit. What happened is that the Soviet government created a league called the Jews Against Fascism, the Jewish Organization Against Fascism, right? And so they took the Cecil B. DeMille, who was also born on August 12th, of the theater company in Soviet Union, and said, look, you're our founder. And they gave him all the support. And they created also, it wasn't just the Jewish, it was the youth, the elderly, they had like 4 or 5 different organizations. And this was because after Russia and Germany fell out from their contract, and there was a war, and like 1/4 of the Soviet people died, Stalin wanted the Western support, so he put the Jews in the Jewish Fascist League against that, for that. And so they came over to the United States, and they filled out the Polo Grounds, which is right here, where the Giants, the New York Giants, used to play. And Paul Robeson, the famous singer and writer, he was big friends with them. They fit 50,000 people. They did a tour of the East Coast, and they raised a shit ton of money. And when they came back, they realized that all their family was dead in the Holocaust or whatever. And so what happened was once they established the state of Israel, right, Goldier came in, and they were, hello, master of the universe, and they just loved it. And Stalin was like, fuck that. Fuck these guys. And took away, and then put them in these trials. But yeah, that was, when you say eliminate, that was an elimination because of the Holocaust and because of the Soviet Union. That was the core of the best of Yiddish poetry that existed in the world. That was it. So they did eliminate that to an extent.
Well, poetry is a threat. Poetry on its own merit is a threat to structures of control and hierarchy. Because what poetry does is it says, here's language. We're going to organize language in a way that is different than is, allowed, let's say, or is different than is the language you would hear on TV or in the official channels of government.
Sure.
There is a rearrangement. There is a juxtaposition. There is a construction of words that brings forth kind of truths about the human experience. And often these truths are a threat, like the suffering of daily life, like we were speaking about earlier. That's really not something that USA wants to be disseminated freely to people at large, because you want people obedient and going to work, as George Carlin would say.
Yeah.
And so I think that poetry in its nature is a threat, can be a threat, and especially when you can kind of hide or veil truth. You know what I'm saying? So it makes sense to me why these people, would be killed. And I think in our day and age, I think this is a whole topic to explore as well. Is poetry still a threat?
I think you almost laughed there for a second. I mean, it was
No,
great.
it's not funny. I mean, I
I thought it was hilarious. You were like, yeah, so I can totally justify why those people had to be killed. And I'm like, wow, that's awesome.
No. Murder's wrong, man. I'm always against any kind of murder. Intentional killing of another human is deplorable.
Yeah, it's a basket of deplorables. So what do you think about that Charlottesville thing?
Listen, it's just what I said. I mean, I think murder is just disgusting, and I think that whoever committed those murders needs to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law and removed from the population.
Agreed.
I mean, period.
Agreed.
Full stop. And,
Absolutely.
I personally, I don't like looking at images of gruesome occurrence. I just don't. I don't like seeing those images.
Okay, so the people that were hit by the car, right? Those people were a member of the Anti-Fascist League, just like the people that were on the night of the murdered poets, a member of the Anti-Fascist League. So today, one member of the Anti-Fascist League was killed by a car. It wasn't a 12 or 13 person firing squad, but August 12th, this is our day. And this is what happens when you connect history together, right? I mean, it's small little simple
rhymes.
Yeah. Little small things, It's not that it repeats itself. It just has a constellation or a placement of stars that generate a particular environment for things to happen, and certain things have happened at those particular junctures, and they all have something combined because of it.
Well, every
like if we were to do this show next year, right? On Wikipedia, August 12th, it'd say the Charlottesville car crash.
Yeah. The thing about dates, I mean, and stars, is the sun is at the same degree of Leo every year on August 12th.
Leo,
right,
man, that's a son of a bitch, isn't it?
And so the sun is quite strong there in Leo. It's what is traditionally known as its domicile, or the home of the sun is in that sign of Leo, the zodiacal sign of Leo. But yeah, there may be fixed star alignments. I'd have to see what kind of fixed stars are present in. This is probably what the middle degrees of. What are we at? August 12th?
We're August 12th.
Yeah,
August 12th. Yeah.
We're right here, probably around 15, 16 degrees Leo right now, and there may be a fixed star there that has this nature of kind of restriction of speech or. Political murder. It'd be interesting to find that. I haven't done that research.
Well, Cleopatra died today.
Uh-huh.
They all say it was natural causes.
Yeah. But, I mean, just to go back to it, I think, we're living in a really charged time. People are out.
I love how you say charged time.
Yeah, we're in a charged time.
But isn't is that good or bad? Is that a good?
Well, I look, personally, I'm not going to be caught dead in a fucking crowd, all right?
Neither am I. I fucking hate people.
I don't want to be in such a charged environment with all those passions aflare. Why
would you put yourself in a position where you can't have a choice to use the bathroom? You're surrounded by people, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
There's people with guns. There's crowds of people with guns. I mean, I just personally wouldn't confront people in that way, okay? I mean, look, murder's wrong. It's fucking horrific what happened. That guy needs to go away forever. But just the bigger point, I think, is, we're living in this kind of, it's what we were talking about earlier with the Milo idea. There is some odious ideas that people are propagating right now.
No
white
one said that
identitarianism
Milo was odious.
No, there's ideas that are odious,
sure.
and there's groups that are propagating odiousness. And I think white identitarianism is disgusting, frankly. It's ignorant. it's backwards, it's anti-human, it's a waste of energy. And yeah, people out there are putting a lot of their time and effort into some sort of, white identitarian fantasy. Now, but
Can I
that
take
being,
that in another direction?
Yeah.
All right, so this is my personal observation. It has nothing to do with my feelings on anything, but it's okay to be pro anything else. But you're saying it's a waste of time to be pro-white, right?
I think it's a waste of time to be pro anything. I'm an anti-identitarian, a hard anti-identitarian.
I agree with you.
So I personally would not just put my eggs in a basket of an identity that is based on a racial or ethnic identity.
But a lot of people but a lot of people do, and it's socially acceptable, and the media promotes it, and it's totally fine. I'm not supporting any sort of fucking ethnic nationalism because, at the end of the day, we all bleed the same fucking color. And
well, look, and that's I count me out of any kind of ethnic nationalism or racialized nationalism. I have no interest in it.
we have to say no.
Well, I'm interested
in
something higher. I'm interested in something more profound.
Absolutely, there's so much more.
As you're intimating, I mean, we really have this shared experience of being alive.
That's the only thing we can share.
That connects everybody. And I think, again, going back to poetry and the virtues of poetry, I mean, every human being has a form of language, even Helen Keller. We share language. We share words. These are the kind of things I would be interested in forming an identity around, not a racialized identity.
And what I'm trying to express to you is that there's a lot of big interests that are putting upon this whole racial identity thing. You have a person like George Soros, born on August 12th, that pumps money into both sides. They're pumping money into to protests and organizational groups that are not for the benefit of all, but for the benefit of an interest. And I think that belittles the idea that we should be, doing something for the benefit of the people, Yeah,
it's a great point. It's called fragmentation of the body politic.
Yeah.
And when you fragment the body politic, you're fragmenting your working class. You're fragmenting whatever could be a political class, and in my opinion, that fragmentation fosters, supports the oligarchic structures that we find ourselves operating in. Yeah, and that is to say, look, people with power want the masses of underlings to be divided amongst themselves. It's the Abraham Lincoln quote. What is it? Divided. A house cannot stand, something like that.
It's just like it's like Russia. They promote by national alcohol sales vodka. I just want to go back to one of our sponsors. This is Barton charcoal filtered vodka, available at your local liquor store for $4.75 for a pint. They claim that this is 4 times more thoroughly cleansed than any other vodka, and it'll go straight to the street. Barton vodka. Pick up a pint and find yourself in a homeless shelter near you. Steven Anderson, or S.J. Anderson, is our guest. No one will get to this point in the broadcast, so S.J. Anderson, it's good to see you. We're going 38 minutes and 37 seconds at the moment. Is there any topics we should do? We have to do something like enlightening or funny. Can we do something funny?
Look, man. I just think we can keep rolling here. I mean, support.
Do you have an optimistic view of the United States at the moment?
No, I don't. I have.
What the fuck? Why are you here?
Listen, I mean, the United States to me is a slave ship, and I use that. I mean, people might be uncomfortable with that characterization, but I mean, it's something akin to organized labor. That's what I was saying earlier. I mean, it's a.
Well, that was our first show we did together, the post Memorial Day massacre.
Yeah. Labor is organized in a way to be efficient and to have the fruits of that labor extracted for people that are higher up on the pecking order. And so, yeah, people are in effect under the threat. Not in effect, they are living under the threat of the violence of the streets. I mean. You don't have food, you don't have shelter, you're going to be experiencing some very difficult your body will be experiencing some very difficult effects. And so there is a tangible threat to the physical bodies of people that are living paycheck to paycheck, which is 80% of this country.
That's me.
Yeah, everybody almost. And so, no, I don't have an optimistic sense of America. I think that there's two Americas. I think that the one of them is just such a small percentage of people that we can just kind of almost remove that, and there's just this kind of America of a lot of economic struggle, and that to me is the story. That's the story. It's not like other places where there is a mollification of the worst effects of poverty. You know what I'm saying? Here, you're literally just thrown to the wolves, and no, it's shocking. Really, shocks the conscience. And I think that's probably what's behind a lot of people that are marching, actually, that there's an economic malaise that where people can feel a safety in racial identitarianism, and I think that we would have a lot less of this kind of charged environment if we did things like have debt forgiveness, for example, or had a healthcare model where people could get access to care they might need. Or, we had a housing situation where people could find a secure place to live easily, So, that's kind of where I go with this stuff, man. And it's no, so yeah, I'm not optimistic. I mean, this, I hope I'm not sounding too
No, you sound fucking really
but,
optimistic. You do. You do. You have it in your soul. It's in your DNA. I can hear all these options and identities and programs that you're proposing. And at the end of the day, all right. So let me ask you one question about one of the things that you proposed. The debt relief, right?
Sure.
So debt relief would encompass what?
Well, I think you would start by saying, all right, the entity that is the government, the United States of America, will not owe the Federal Reserve Bank the bonds that the Federal Reserve Bank has purchased on behalf of the Treasury. So you start there, and instantly the national debt is cut maybe in half or more. I'd have to look at the updated numbers. Then what you would do is you would get a new currency, one that doesn't depend on creating a debtor instrument, a debtor-creditor instrument to come into existence. And whether that's gold-backed or blockchain-backed or some kind of digital, coin, you basically allow money to come into existence without creating a debtor as a result of that. And so then you could just pay off the current debts in your new currency that has no debt to nobody. And then from there, you can hire the population, a quadruple living wage or more, to do the work that needs to be done. I mean, I'm looking around. I mean, this needs mowed. These streets could get an upgrade. The infrastructure is quite dilapidated
It's
in
terrible,
Austin,
yeah.
at least in a lot of Austin. So we could have a robust program of regeneration and revitalization of the infrastructure, the government paying workers directly with money that it didn't have to obtain through signing an IOU. And there would be what's called robust economic activity. Within several years, we'd be living in an economic powerhouse where there wouldn't be people living on the streets. I don't know about where you are, but there's a homeless epidemic here in Austin.
There's a homeless epidemic here in New York City. They have like over 8,000 people here in the streets sleeping every night. That's not a small number, 8,000 people.
Yeah, that shocks the conscious, to go back to that phrase. And I mean, so I think we start there.
I'm one fucking paycheck away from being one of those 8,000 people. That's where we're living. So I totally understand.
80%.
I totally understand. You know what's funny is when I get these numbers that are like the world, the entire Earth is actually like 11 to 12 trillion dollars in debt. And I'm like, to who? Uranus? Mars? Who do we owe the money to? Like,
Saturn.
Yeah, Saturn is it the outer rings of Saturn own $7 trillion worth of our debt. It's
Well,
all made
it's
up.
owed
It's
to-
all made up. It's all fucking numbers on a piece of paper.
It's owed to central banks. And this is where we start going back to like the poetic tradition, our ancestors, right? Our poetic ancestors. People like William Carlos Williams. You know, they knew this. You can read Patterson. I mean, he's very clear about
Patterson
how he
is a brilliant
feels.
book, yeah.
Yeah, about the central bank. And he's
Ezra
it's
Pound.
a very
Ezra Pound was the
well, Ezra Pound a little bit more
he got arrested.
controversial,
He got
but
arrested for it.
he was put in a cage and dragged through, you know, southern Italy.
Drugged through the
streets there.
streets. In
Listen,
a cage.
but he was a little more controversial. I think
Why? Because
bought
he has a
into
red
some of the
hair?
idea-
Because he has red hair? Is that what it was?
No. Look, there was some identitarian kind of let's say animosity that he was influenced by. I think that, but yes, he had an understanding of the central bank being, you know, a core part of the modern control structure, and so did William Carlos Williams. And these are our poetic ancestors, the antecedents of you know the poetic landscape that we write in. You know, and so where is that? Is what I'm interested in.
Well, that's the reason.
exploring.
That's the reason why we're doing the show. That's the whole reason why we're doing the show. It's just to,
Well, yeah, we
just to put these ideas out there, because you
Well,
know
good. I'm glad.
I could get a fucking bullhorn and go down to like Union Square and say the Federal Reserve is not federal, and no one cares. I mean, maybe they do. I don't know.
Federal. It's complicated. It's a complicated, legalistic albatross.
It's not a
And
bank.
it's you know, so that's just to go back to your question. That's where I would start when I talk about freeing the nation of debts. Okay, I would make the bankruptcy system a lot easier. You know, I would let people basically, you know, file bankruptcy, and yeah, there will be consequences for a few years, but basically you can be rehabilitated fairly quickly. I would probably reinstate some usury laws that are actually anti-usurious.
Yeah, usury
know,
is against the Bible. I mean,
Well, yeah, usury means traditionally any interest.
Yeah.
You know, and now we've got laws. I think in Texas, it's 18% interest is allowed on loans. I mean, that's too much for
they
someone
had like
who can't.
up to, they had like up to 24% on car loans like recently.
Exactly. And there's payday loans that are, you know, you can go up to high as several 100% because of certain legal loopholes. And so, yeah, I would start with the usury that seems to be just one of the American values now that we've somehow taken on.
Well, we fought a
that.
war against Britain over taxes. You know, Jesus, why do we want to? I don't know. It just seems to me that if you're gonna work as hard as you do work in the United States of America, you want your money not to go to wars, not to go to usury, not to go to wherever, but to at least better your situation. Why are people paying for an elite class of people to rule over us and design wars? I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't make sense at one level, but at another level, it makes a whole bunch of sense.
Oh
and
no,
it's
it
because
makes
of
sense for them. Yeah.
Well, no. Just to go back to what we were speaking about earlier, this cultural manipulation that we seem to be under, I call it trauma-based influencing. And so people are traumatized. Like I'm talking about my grandfather and father earlier. I mean, they went to war zones and they came back traumatized, and you know, and very pliant as a result. Very quick to just kind of do what they were told by the system that you know uses the media, uses the newspapers and other things to tell people what to think and what to believe. I go back to George Carlin. I mean, that's what George Carlin said. He said that it's a big club. You ain't in it. You and I ain't in it. And it's the same club that they're beating you with every day to tell you what to believe and what to think. And so we live in a system where, I mean, I just think about the people you know. I don't know about what Harlem's like these days, but
It's
I mean,
fucking
in Austin,
horrible. It's a horror show.
well, I'm just saying good people. I talk to good people everywhere,
Oh,
people
well.
that are just kind human beings. But there's a willingness, there's almost an ardent defense of outlets like the New York Times, and it's not just the New York Times, the
Yeah, but
Washington
the New York
Post.
Times is a fucking rag at this point. It's a fucking
Well, what
rag.
I'm saying is people are using their energy to defend what is clearly a propaganda rag. That's what it's become. Good people are so willing.
Well, they get the paper and okay. So here's the deal. This is how it works. This is how it works. They put on their fucking slippers. They have their brunch. They get the New York Times Sunday edition at their doorstep delivered, and they feel like they're enlightened. Like
No, but that's the key thing. Why are people so quick to defend what is clearly the moneyed interest of this country creating realities on their on their to further their own interests. Why are good people like you in these lower classes here doing the work to defend what is clearly a constructive reality that benefits the oppressive system we're living in?
Absolutely.
That is the heart of the matter. And my theory, part of my theory, is that we're living in a traumatized state. People have been traumatized in war. People have been traumatized under the threat of going to the streets and not having shelter, not having food. People have been traumatized in any number of ways in the school system. I mean, you go to a public school, spend a year in the public schools, and, if you don't have a self-esteem issue, come talk to me. I want to know what cereal you're eating in the morning. You know what I'm saying? And so there's on many levels by which the going back to these series of things, the language, the flow of ideas, the flow of reality tunnels and reality frames, that is formed and controlled from a very young age to produce people that do not question what they're told through the channels that are sanctioned by the oligarchs in America. And, all I can do is pray for peace. I can try to look. We're probably brainwashed, James. That's the truth.
Well, I drink the fluoride. I drink the water, dude. I digest fluoride every day. Every day.
Well, what else? Yeah. So it's sort of saying, what are the techniques by which one can sort of wake up? One can kind of come to a moment of clarity around this moment, around in this country. And I think poetry again is part of that. I mean, when you give your mind the ability to organize words and try to elicit something of value through that process, that's not the kind of technical thinking that this system increasingly requires, where there's a lot of just recasting of what one is told through algorithms. You know what I'm saying? Computer type style algorithms.
Yeah,
that's why coding is the new career. People are trying to learn, basically logic and mathematics and spend all day in that kind of frame. And I'm not saying there can't be creativity in the coding process, that there's some interesting stuff happening there. I just think that there's a mechanized, sort of repetitive ways of thinking that are exclusionary of counter narratives. And I'm interested. I'd like to encourage people to put down whatever information you're reading, including me and you. Go read some other different information.
Yeah, but our books are good. Don't say that people can't buy our books.
I'm not saying they can't buy them. I'm just saying.
Yeah, buy them. www.undergroundbooks.org.
Listen. So is some of this making sense at least? I mean,
absolutely.
The question is why do people think what they think, and how can we get individuals, and how can you and I start thinking new, more useful ideas that are more healing, more loving, more effective for our higher flourishment, and just more pleasing, really, more aesthetically pleasing. I mean, how do we make that shift, not only as an individual but as a collective? And I have my own techniques.
Well, look. At the end of the day, what we're doing right now is doing that. So we're starting. This is episode 0000.01. This is a way for us to have a voice to incite dialogue or discourse, and that's the best we can do. We can wake up and say, I want to be a goddamn Superman, but the truth is that you can only lift as much as you can lift. You can only go as fast as you can go. And what we're doing is we're just espousing wisdom. We're not the young kids we used to be. We have the ability to transverse our knowledge and to help people. And that's why we're doing this right now. I mean, if you ask what the direction is, this is the fucking direction. This is the direction, because this is the way that we can expose our ideas to a larger crowd. Right now, if we don't do this, we're just sitting in our apartments or sitting wherever we're sitting and talking on the phone and having great conversation, but not helping anybody. By us having this conversation and future conversations, so that people can understand that people are having conversations, then we can help get the whole movement. It's not like the Hug America thing, It's like Hands Across America. It's not that, right? But it's kind of like that, because all we have to do is just start talking to people, And once people start talking to each other and not handheld in their device, then, we can make a difference. But the truth of the matter, Stephen, if you want to get since you were so pessimistic, I'm gonna go a little dark as well. All right, so the truth is, the war is lost. Us humans have only moments or manners to exist, and we'll be fine if we love each other. But if we don't love each other, then we're done. We're gone, right?
Sure.
So I think this has been we're going at 55 minutes and 24 seconds. S.J. Anderson, ladies and gentlemen. S.J. Anderson. Can we get a round of applause for this young man? Is there anything that's on your mind before? I mean, we still have,
Yeah, I do want to say some other
All right.
things. I mean, look, for me, I mean, these political questions, I think, can often be a rabbit hole or a dead end. Because a rabbit hole it leads to a dead end. I think what I'm interested in is, freedom of the spirit, right? Mental clarity, soul clarity, the victory over kind of this reality we've incarnated into. And I think that the questions that speak to the answer, questions, that can answer this other question, I know that's kind of circular, but are often not political. And the politics can kind of be a dead end. I'm more interested in the spiritual. And I think the creative is part of the spiritual. And that's what's so interesting. You're going to go back about poetry, and I'm talking about it repeatedly.
We're not hating on that.
It can express the spiritual. It can express the political. I mean, there's a lot that this form can be deployed in service of. And, I just think that the politics can be divisive, and it can be a distraction from other more important concerns, like, what is the state of my soul? What does it mean to be alive?
What is the state of your soul?
It's a light. My soul is robust and thriving and a light, and it's happy, man. It's free.
I like that.
But it's not, that requires a cultivation. I mean, I can kind of denigrate and desiccate myself, depending on what I'm doing and the behaviors I'm engaged in. And, I think that there's, so I just want to say that I'm not really focused on the politics very much at all. I mean, I try to stay abreast
I
of
hate
what's
the politics. I don't want
in
to do
my reality,
anything.
but I'm not.
No. I'm with you on this.
Yes. So I just want to make that clear. I feel like things like, meditation, things like, contemplation, things like, really love between beings, relational love, sharing of emotion.
This is the romance.
Eye gazing.
Wow.
These kind of things that can really go where we go inside and start understanding just what it means to be a human being and just how powerful we are, and developing insight into that. Those are the technologies I'm interested in, because a person that can appreciate how precious it is to be a human being, a person that's in touch with that and has gratitude for what the gift we've been given as humans, that person is not going to be driving cars into crowds or harming other people or what have you. That person is going to have a net positive.
Yeah, but then you're going straight back to the fucking. You're going straight back to that. If I don't have enough rent, I'm on the street. The reason why a lot of these people act the way that they do is because they're in. Like when I told you that you were an optimist, I believe that because you're talking about these amazing opportunities where people don't have to worry about this or that, and that we can all get together on this certain idea. But when we still have these instilled class or caste systems, then we're ultimately going to always have these problems, and we have had them throughout history. So, okay, so let's look at one quick question before we go. How do you distinguish the difference between a small elite or a king or a ruling power over a mass of people as any other government that we have in the service of the globe?
How is a small elite distinguished from other forms of
No,
government?
I'm saying how is that different? Like historically, are we in any different place than we were throughout all these years?
I really think we've always, humanity, from what I can tell and glean from what I've read, the nature of this reality is a hierarchical.
That's what I'm trying to
nature.
say. So if we've
So yeah,
if we've always existed this way, then your optimism is defeated by the fact that there'll be some sort of hierarchy that diffuses your ideas.
well, listen, I think telling the truth about it, I'm bringing it up in so much as it's required to kind of dismantle the false narratives that are propagated in our discourse. But once that's done, once people can kind of realize this isn't freedom, we don't live in freedom, we don't live in a democratic society.
We don't.
Then there's benefits to that are not changing the society, the hierarchy, right? The benefits are that now individuals can question other parts of the construct and get access then to the treasure within, right? The love and treasure within, and so for me, it all ultimately will come back to a kind of a spiritual embodiment and kind of an ownership of the strength of the human spirit, and truth is a big part of that. Truth as one sees truth, and expressing that is kind of an essential element.
Truth is very powerful. We want to thank everybody for coming into the James Kepple Radio Hour, Volume 1, Season 3. S.J. Anderson, ladies and gentlemen. Wow. What a mountain goat of a man. And I say that in all respect because I'm sure he would best me in hand-to-hand sword combat. We're going to hear more about your works coming soon, right, S.J.?
Yeah, I guess, the editing team at Underground Books will, be a part of the timetable there. But
did you have a poem to go out on?
Sure, I'll read a piece.
That would be great. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Let me get up. Get this poem up here. Let me see which one did I want to read here. All right. This one is called.
All right, go on.
Mm-hmm.
We've done an hour, so this is the after show. I like it.
Okay, great. This piece is called "They Can't, They Won't." Want a quick hit to rub craving down? Conduct the assigned task to their lowest functional level, convalesce and still. Try diluting the bottomless well within her. Smearing lengthwise, rest your pegs of deprivation. Jobs aren't real work anyhow. They're sentences pronounced against technique. Subdued by design, even peonage has been commandeered. But whatever, vitality sputters, even in a diminished carcass. All announce not guilty, no matter the permissions.
Ladies and gentlemen, S.J. Anderson, you can find his work online. Also, he will be having a forthcoming book with Underground Books, a poetry collection. Unnamed at this point. This project is going to be one of our biggest babies, and we're going to treat it just as well. It's going to be nice. Ladies and gentlemen, can we give a round of applause for S.J. Anderson? And that's me clapping. It was good talking to you, sir.
All right.
Is there anything else Is there anything else we need?
I don't think so. Maybe we can. I'm gonna start driving right now, so we can stay on if you want to keep talking. But if you need to go.
Brother, I'll talk to you in a second. We're gonna do a interview with a man on the street, Jay Sauer 3.0. He's coming up next. Steven Anderson, S.J. Anderson.